I attribute like a lot of my, personal skills to wrestling. Like I learned a lot of people skill, perseverance and determination through sport. And that's really at the end of the day what we're trying to do is build better citizens, better humans in the world.
Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Representation in sports isn't just important, it's actually transformational. When Taylor McPherson stepped onto the wrestling mat, she was creating space where none existed before. As a proud Micmac woman and Amazing Race Canada winner, Taylor has turned her passion toward empowering Indigenous youth through sport. Today, we explore how athletics can foster resilience, reclaim cultural identity, and drive real change in communities. I hope you enjoy the conversation. This podcast is brought to you by TELUS Smart Home Security. Secure, simplify, and easily monitor your home from anywhere using the Smart Home Security app. Visit TELUS.com/smarthome-security to learn more about Canada's most trusted security provider. Hi, Taylor. It is so good to see you.
Hello. Nice to see you too, Tamara.
I was just scrolling through your Instagram, and honestly, it's a very happy Instagram. It is, first of all, you're so photogenic. You're very involved with the community. You're kind of a big deal because you won the Amazing Race Canada. And it's just so fun to see these photos of you, and it looks like you're just embracing life.
Yeah, trying to, for sure.
Yeah. So, we have to start with Amazing Race. So, you won season 10 of Amazing Race Canada.
Yeah.
How did not how did you win, but how did you see yourself going on a show like this?
No, to be honest, like I never really envisioned reality TV. I just never even really thought of it as an option, It's never something I would ever think to look into. And so, yeah, the fact that we had gone on this insane show and ended up winning it is beyond what I could have ever imagined, really.
It's amazing. It really is. So for people who are listening and they haven't, seen the show or seen the season, tell us a little bit about it. Like maybe, who your partner was and maybe, do you have a big memory from, you must.
I mean, so many. But yeah, no, so my partner on The Amazing Race was Katie Mulcahy. So she's my best friend, also former wrestling teammate. So we wrestled for the University of Alberta together for 5 of our seasons. And so, we became really close being on the wrestling team and, best friends outside of wrestling. So when we saw the ad to apply for Amazing Race, I was like, hey, you want to do this with me? And she was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So she was ready to drop everything. I was ready to drop everything. And that's kind of how we got there. And then in terms of like our favorite moment, I mean, there's so many insane moments that we had on the race, but I mean, it was pretty insane starting at Niagara Falls and getting to rappel down the falls as the very first challenge.
Yeah, I would be outright eliminated at the first challenge. The height would have got me.
Yeah, but then I think, obviously the best moment of all was running down the Commonwealth Stadium stairs saying, John, we're coming, not realizing we were in first place, and being genuinely and, like, truly shocked that we had just won the Amazing Race. Like, it took a lot of convincing from the other teams. We were like, "Did we we actually just did that?" Because John's just standing there staring at you like and you're like, say it, John, say it. He's just staring, building that suspense. And yeah, so that was definitely hands down the best moment. And not because we won, obviously that's great, but because we finished that whole journey together. We got through it, still remain best friends, and did it in our home city. So that was what was crazy.
It's pretty incredible, and a forever memory, right? That's a memory that you'll have forever. It's pretty exciting. I mean, you're an athlete. You're a wrestler. Um, how did you get into wrestling? I like how you laugh at that question. This is not the first time you've been asked that question.
No, this is my favorite question because it actually started in grade 5. I had this teacher named Mr. Watts. He was like super jacked, tatted, the coolest teacher in the school, and he always had WWE posters like posted up around his grade 5 classroom, still does to this day. And so he was like, you know what, Taylor, you're the perfect stature, you're feisty, you'd be perfect for the sport of wrestling. Join when you get into grade 7. And so, obviously, because he was my favorite teacher, I took his word for it and I joined the wrestling team in grade 7. And from the time I stepped on the mat, you couldn't pull me off. I loved the opportunity to feel empowered, to show my strength, to show people that even though I was like small, I was feisty and that I could throw you around any day. So I love that, like that power it gave me almost in a sense.
When we think about barriers to access sport for Indigenous youth, what are some of the barriers?
I mean, so a lot of the barriers that we see in our sport programming is usually cost, of course. Especially nowadays, sport is becoming more and more expensive. Everything's becoming more expensive. So sport isn't really something that people are looking to, I guess, um, invest in or, spend their money on first and foremost. Obviously, we all got to live. So definitely cost is always a huge barrier. Um, Transportation to and from programming can also be a huge barrier for a lot of our families. And lastly, just like the access to the sport programming and culturally safe sport programs. Not a lot of the time our sport programs always, super inclusive or aware of, those societal barriers that our youth and families face. And so creating, less opportunity for that access and even just capacity within sport programming, like across the province for Indigenous youth, there isn't a whole lot of it. And so we're really trying to build it up and build capacity either within community or within urban settings to create opportunities for our youth to access sport.
I mean, you mentioned so many things there that, I don't think a lot of people think about transportation when it comes to sport, right? So if you're living in a rural area, I mean, transportation it's everything. If you are, I mean, city centers are one thing, right? Or even the suburbs, are okay because you can, but a lot of Canadians live rurally, and then you also mentioned the cost, and it's just so true. It is shocking how much things cost for kids, and I mean, never mind how expensive everything is today, but even just looking for swim lessons, right? Or skating lessons or like wrestling, right? I mean, you were fortunate enough to start at school, but that's not always the case either, is it, in school?
It's that's the thing, school sport isn't yeah, it's not even always an option for youth as well because, when you think a lot of after school programming, which is when the school sports typically happen, um, again, it comes down to that transportation piece. How are they gonna get home, if they take the bus? Can family members pick them up? So, that as much as we think school sport can be accessible, it's not, and I know I witnessed that firsthand, working with a Misquitchie Academy. I was trying to run a wrestling program there and I realized real quick that, whoa, transportation is a big issue. I wouldn't have kids stay after school because hey, I need to catch the bus or else I got no way of going home. So um it's still a barrier, even if it's in our public education systems.
It's a huge barrier, and now we see, both parents working, a lot of single parents. So now we're talking about transportation and cost, right? Or if you've got to go home and babysit your younger siblings while your parents are, still at work or whatever it may be. It's a really interesting, idea or sort of conversation about how do we make it more accessible? I mean, I think about accessibility sometimes about just, you're trying to get on the phone at the community center so you can get some dance lessons or some swimming lessons. And registration opens up at 9 a.m., which I've never understood for parents why it's school time drop off. I don't know why you would make registration start at 9 a.m. It seems really odd to me when every parent is out dropping off kids, but it all fills up with it by 9:05.
And that's the thing, I think and you see that in a lot of programs, accessibility doesn't mean just location. It is how are the forms done? Even if you say could access funding grants to support your youth in programming, again, accessing those grants, filling out those applications, like nothing is easy. And as great as technology is nowadays and forms and all this stuff, it still can be a huge barrier to families, right? And of all groups, right? It's there's so many times where I'm like, okay, I'm highly educated. I know how to work the computers really well and all of this stuff, but sometimes I can't even figure out a form or an application process. It's like you constantly have to jump through different hoops and loopholes to make things work sometimes. And so, if there's a family out there that has a lot of kids, like if you have to do that for every single child or whatnot, like that becomes a process and that becomes a lot of work and it's tough. It's tough.
I don't think unless you have been the person who's trying to navigate that, it's almost impossible to understand why it would frustrate someone like me or you or any other parent or guardian trying to register somebody. Tell me about Shed.
Yeah. Yeah, so the SHED program is a pilot project that I kind of started working on with a group of students back in my undergrad. So it stands for the Spiritual Holistic Exercise Den. So it was created, like the name and the concept was created by a different group through a case competition. And then basically what happened is they had gotten another grant. Um, and this all happened at the U of A. So they had gotten another grant to actually pilot the projects that won. And so my group came on as the pilot group. And we basically took the name, took the idea, and ran with it. And just, we were given $10,000 and they said, hey, work with this community and make this program come to life. And so what the group and I did was worked hard to create a play manual. And we worked with the community, so Capoeino First Nations, which is up by High Prairie. We worked with them to determine what kind of, sports and rec equipment would they like to see in this program. We tried to keep it primarily land based so that, if there's no access to indoor facilities or, different outdoor facilities, that it would still be able to be you could play anywhere really. And so what it's a physical shed. We fill it with a bunch of different sports equipment and we run programming out of it. And so that was kind of the first year. And so last year we actually had the opportunity to pilot it again. This time we did it with Capoeino again and Sucker Creek First Nations. Both are within like a 30-minute drive of one another. And what we had done this time around was we had students create training manuals. So the U of A students basically worked on training manuals from September to December, went out to the community, trained the older youth in the community how to run the program. And then by summer, we did a second training session just to refresh their memory, fix anything they suggested we should change in our training manuals. And got back to it and they ran a 4-week summer camp program for their community.
That's so good.
Yeah, and it was all physical. So it's basically a physical literacy and sports specific, like sports skill program. So they're exposed to a bunch of different sports and equipment. And basically, the older youth in the community lead the younger ones. And so it's kind of a self-sustainable program where the older youth get that leadership opportunity and the younger youth hopefully come up and want to do it as well.
Yeah, yeah. That must make you feel so good that it was successful.
Yeah, it was a really, like, from the feedback that we got from the youth, and the community, they were really happy with it. And I'm happy to say, Sucker Creek will be doing it again this summer. Their own older youth that ran it last year are excited to train the new youth counselors coming in. So they don't really need us, which we're like, okay, as as long as you don't need us, our help, we'll sit back, you do your thing. But it's cool to see the youth in the community taking on that initiative as well and wanting to lead this for their younger community members.
Wait, you mentioned having a culturally safe space in sport for Indigenous youth. What does that mean for somebody who's listening? They're like, well, what do you mean culturally safe?
That could be as simple as just being informed. Education, I always say, is key. A lot of our elders nowadays say education is the new buffalo. It provides us with our way of life, and ways to navigate life, and is really going to be at the heart of how we move forward with truth and reconciliation. And so when I think about a culturally safe space, just having people who are educated and understand, the unique barriers, the unique, really anything that families face within our communities. So, yeah, it's really education is at the heart of it all.
Yeah, and as you were talking about that, I was thinking, y- you know, we could probably add curiosity in there too, right? Because curiosity comes with education. It's seeing somebody who maybe comes from a different walk of life than you and asking questions or being curious about them or what their strengths are or what their family is, who their family is or whatever it might be, right? And I do find that sometimes it's really interesting, and you would know this better than anybody when you are sometimes watching or you're a spectator in youth sport, and I have 3 teenagers. Parents can get quite uh weird. Like it can become something you can almost see it's more about the parents than about the kids that are actually playing. It's very interesting, right? And how it's so serious and all that sort of stuff. And I understand competitiveness, but also sports should feel safe, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I huge competitor myself. I love competitive sport. But at the same time, not every child loves competitive sport. And that is okay. That's okay to remember. I think for some parents out there who are very competitive, they want to see their kids succeed. Of course, everybody wants to see their kids succeed. But not every kid is built for competitive sports. Sometimes they want to do it just for fun, just to be a kid. And that is 100% okay. And so I think, in terms of like a lot of our programming, we try to create those fun and safe spaces. It's not about who's better than who develops at the fastest rate. It's really just about like if you're coming and you're showing up 100% as yourself every single time and you're bringing your best foot forward, every time you step out in that, ring or in that on that golf course, whatever it may be, that's good for us. Like you just showing up is important at the same time as well, So there's so much more to sport than competition, than medals and banners. For me, it's really about that social development piece. I attribute like a lot of my personal skills to wrestling. Like I learned a lot of people skill, perseverance and determination through sport. And that's really at the end of the day what we're trying to do is build better citizens, better humans in the world. Not so much, elite Olympic athletes. Of course, that's amazing, but not everybody's going to be an Olympic athlete. It's like maybe the 1% of kids.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is everything you just said right there. That is everything. That is the point of sport. The social development, the friendships. I mean, look at you. You and your friend you won the Amazing Race Canada. I mean, this is what sport did for you. And I know you're competitive and you have so many accolades, like you really do. But at the end of the day, you made a lifelong friend and you had a core memory experience and you won a reality TV show. That's what sport did for you.
And it gave us those skills to get through that. And that was the thing, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, like, you won the Amazing Race, like, how did you do it?" All this stuff, and we're like, it was the 6 years of training and wrestling that prepared us for those moments. We didn't just go like, we didn't even go into the race expecting to win. Like, we said, "You know what? We're gonna have fun with this. We're gonna embrace every single moment that we can." But we're not gonna go in here saying, "Oh yeah, like we're gonna win this," because we know how crazy of a journey it is and how there's so many different things that could come your way. So we didn't go in it with the expectation to win, obviously the hopes to. Um, but really we just were like, we're gonna depend solely on the skills we've learned throughout the years and depend on this friendship that we have and trust one another and fully embrace it. Really, like we just wanted to be 100% in the moment, and we were. So that was the most amazing part of it all is we really embraced the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we like to do here to thank our guests for being on our podcast is to ask them to choose a Canadian nonprofit. You chose the Sports Central Association. They're based out of Edmonton. And we're going to make a donation in your name, Taylor, as a thank you for you being a guest on our podcast. So thank you for choosing the Sports Central Association. I would think that for a lot of kids, sport is almost like an escape from what's happening at home, an escape from what's happening at school, what's happening with friends, what happened in the past, what you're worried about in the future. It becomes this escape for so many kids. Was that your experience?
Yeah, honestly, growing up I definitely had some troubles in the household, and for me, I sport was my way to get away from it all. It was my way to do something selfishly for me in those times where I felt like I really had to grow up in some moments. But wrestling was my way to like focus on me and my path forward and what like build really what my future was going to be. So in grade 10, I almost quit. Because I wasn't winning, I was losing. I hated it. And like I said, I was kind of going through those troubles. And it really started to escalate a lot more in like grade 11 and 12. But my coaches encouraged me to come back in grade 11. And I was determined, like when he said that you could get a scholarship for university, I said, okay, I'm going to do that. So I worked 10 times harder. I went to the gym multiple times a week. I would go to 6 a.m. practice at school, go to school all day, and then go to my I don't know, after school practice and then or gym, and then go to my night practice, which was usually at around like 7:30 till 9. So I was usually out of the house from like 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night at the latest at least. Um, and for me, that was just my way to do something for me. Really take care of what my future was gonna look like. And I had a huge passion for a ton of different sports, but wrestling obviously was my number one. But yeah, sport was constantly just my safe place and a way to really feel empowered and strong and show people what I could do.
And I mean, everything that you just said uh, is, I mean, it's what you hope sport does, right? It's what it becomes that much needed distraction or escape or confidence building or friendship building or whatever it may be. But then we have this access problem, especially for Indigenous youth who are maybe living rurally or don't have the access that they need. And so, because when I think about we have our phones now and we have all these distractions, right? It's so easy, adults too, not just kids, to pick up our phone when we're feeling bad or to many people who are in situations that are really tumultuous at home, they might do other things to escape, right? You might start drinking, doing drugs, whatever it may be, to find that escape for yourself. And I think that we can all connect to that. Um, Sport can stop that.
Yeah, I believe 100%. Sport, you know, what we say a lot of the time is like movement is medicine. And it doesn't need to be sport. It could be recreation, physical activity, any sort of movement really. I'm constantly harping on kids and pushing them like it doesn't have to be sport. It's just, you know, we're living, like you said, in a day and age where phones, video games, everything is at our fingertips. And kids aren't learning how to play freely like we used to, at the playground. My brother and I would go out to the playground till 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night in the summer. My mom would be like, get out of the house, go, like, go. And kids don't do that as often now, I notice. And, even just the physical literacy skills are atrocious. I hate to say it, but, I go into different schools and teach gym classes, the basics of wrestling. And if kids can't even do a somersault or a cartwheel, then how are they going to learn how to wrestle? Wrestling is all about physical and spatial awareness. And so to me, it's we need to get our youth back to the land, back to the playgrounds, outside, just being kids again and getting away from all of the distractions of phones and video games. And, like you said, we're guilty of it too. We don't move our bodies enough. Physical activity goes into older age, and we forget about that as well. With Indigenous Sport Council of Alberta, we do a lot of programming that's family oriented. So we try to get that buy in for the family and the youth to participate together because when you have families participating in an activity together, A, they're more likely to support their kids in whatever endeavors or sports that they choose, but B, it gets everyone moving, and it shows the importance of physical health. And it's a preventative measure as well, it prevents diabetes. And like you're saying, getting into alcoholism or drugs. And, a lot of our communities, unfortunately, are facing huge opioid crises right now. And, um, I think sport could be an escape and can be a way of people maybe not going down that path and, choosing something that's a healthier lifestyle for themselves.
Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't have to be a sport. You don't have to go out and become a professional athlete by any means. My kids always like to say, you need to go outside and touch some grass right now. You need to go for a little
Go
walk.
touch the tree.
Go touch the tree, right? And it's so true. And, sometimes I think here I live in Vancouver. The beach is a 10-minute drive away. I never go to the beach in Vancouver. I never do, right? Because you're so busy in your life. You go to the beach when maybe you go on a vacation or something. But it's like, I could just, what is stopping me from going down to the beach or my kids 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it is, and renting a paddleboard or doing these things? There are all these dreams in your head, but it makes you feel so good.
It does. Life for me has been, as you can imagine, like whirlwind crazy lately. Katie and I have been doing a million speaking engagements, which I'm grateful for. I've been working with Indigenous Sport Council of Alberta. I've been coaching multiple different programs. And a lot of the time I'm like, holy cow, like when is there going to be time for me? And, I got a dog, last August. And he has really helped me slow down. He reminds me like, "Hey, I need to go out for a walk." I live in an apartment. I can't let him out in the backyard. So it's nice because he helps me slow down. He helps me go outside for my 30-minute walks almost 3 times a day now, and even just that simple movement has helped me, okay, I get to step outside, breathe in the fresh air, see the trees, watch the birds. I'm grounded. I feel more connected, and that's what we need to get back to is, even if it's just a simple walk, a walk is beneficial to your health. It's exercise, it's movement, but it's also good for your mental health, right? And we don't talk about that enough either.
We sure don't. We could do a whole other conversation on that. Taylor, you're such a great role model for all of us. Not only for the kids that you're inspiring, but also for all of us adults, right? Who need this reminder too. And, your dedication and just your pure joy in your voice when you talk about this is inspiring and super helpful, and a really good reminder for all of us about the importance of access to sport for everybody. So I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I want everybody to look at your Instagram because it is so happy, and I love it. It's at Tay_McPherson. That's McPherson. So at Tay_McPherson 101. Don't forget the 101. Taylor, thank you so much. Great conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.